was a great deal of worry that Israeli planes and American planes would be in the air at the same time, and perhaps American pilots and Israeli pilots might shoot each other down. The agreement, if there has been an agreement, sort of clears the decks now for the Israeli Air Force to take action. Israeli planes have been in the air on a round-the-clock basis. Whether they will now do something before Israel is hit, if it is hit, is unclear. We're in sort of a gray area now. It wouldn't be a preemptive strike because there's a war already going on. So we'll just have to wait until we get an announcement, and one I think is expected soon.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to try to go to General Michael Dugan, retired commander of the United States Air Force, very recently retired. I'm told that we can't get General Dugan up at the moment. One of the important questions of the hour is if Iraqi missiles or planes are attacking Saudi Arabia, what their likely targets would be. We have air raid sirens in both Dhahran and in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and people moving to air raid shelters in both places. We do not know whether any actual Iraqi attacks are underway. The Iraqis are most likely to try to attack with their Scud missiles. Bob Schieffer is with General George Crist, the retired United States Marine General. Bob, taking into account everything that we know and have heard thus far, what is your and General Crist's best assessment of what's probably happening, while emphasizing that so far as we know it's an air war here in the early hours?
Well, that seems to be what it is, doesn't it, General? This region is exploding. And one bit of information, Dan, that we've just gotten here. An AP network news reporter named Tony Winton, in an urgent voice over a telephone just a moment ago, said, Washington, we're seeing activity in the hotel. He is in Dhahran. After saying that, his line went dead. So this fits in with the other things that we're hearing from Bob Simon. General, when the air raid sirens were heard in Dhahran, what would the Iraqis use to attack Dhahran? And
so they're probably seeing that under attack. I think, Bob, that attacks are also going on at airfields in the north and airfields south of Baghdad that generally run along the river all the way down to Kuwait with the air defenses. I think that there are other airplanes on those F-15Es in the air now going after those things.
Well, this is going exactly as you and other military experts have suspected that it would, and that is some sort of an air attack, apparently massive air attacks. What do you think is happening right now from what we know, John?
What I think is happening right now is that first their surface-to-air missiles are now being taken out by the F-4G, the Wild Weasel aircraft, and the EA-6As being jammed as they try to get rid of those air defenses. At the same time, they're attacking those airfields, trying to get the airplanes on the grounds and in their shelters, going after communication centers, and the missiles that have everybody warned about, I think they're going after too, Bob.
Thank you, General. Back to you, Dan.
CBS News producer and reporter John Reed is in a protective bunker in Dhahran. Remember, that's on the eastern coast of Saudi Arabia, near the Persian Gulf. John, what's happening there at the moment?
Well, it's just everybody. Hello, Dan. It's just everybody sitting around down in the basement of the International Hotel here. The sirens went off. We tried to broadcast as long as possible, as you know. And then the hotel cut the power. I'm sure it's for lights out and for safety. We have no idea whether there's any real air raid about. None of us are going to gamble with that, or of course, we're going to stay down here in the basement until it's all clear. Everybody just grabbed their gas masks and their chemical suits and ran down in the dark.
Thank you very much, John Reed. Let's leave that map up for just a moment, if you will, please, because it will help us orient people. As you look at the map, there have been air raids. That doesn't necessarily mean air attacks. Air raid sirens in Riyadh, in the center of Saudi Arabia, the capital of the country. Dhahran there on the coast around the Persian Gulf. Look, just north of Dhahran, there's a road that runs from Dhahran right on up into Kuwait. While Kuwait is not marked on this particular map, it's right there at the, well, you can see it in slight red below Iraq. On that road, leading from Dhahran up to Kuwait, is where the U.S. Marines are basically based. If you look on the map now to the west, that is looking off to the left of the map above Dhahran, is basically where U.S. Army troops are. That would include the airborne units, the 24th Mechanized Infantry, the 7th Corps. Now, Kuwait City, this gives you a close in. This is of Kuwait itself. Now, look down just at the bottom of the map. As you can see, Saudi Arabia, the air raids, the air attacks, so far as we can determine, are in both Iraq and in Kuwait. We know that they involve F-15E fighters and other various U.S. fighter and fighter bomber aircraft. It's believed that some cruise missiles, the so-called Tomahawk missiles, have been fired into Iraq. Doug Tennell is in Jordan. Now, if you remember your map there, and again we'll show you the map in a moment, Jordan has borders with Saudi Arabia, with Iraq, and with Israel. Doug Tennell is in Amman, Jordan. Doug, any sign there of heightened activity?
Not heightened activity, Dan, but tremendous tension here. Amman right now is an almost silent city. People waiting, people listening, people monitoring foreign broadcasts. Jordanian radio and TV has not yet announced to the kingdom that the war is underway. It's said that they're waiting for word from the palace. CBS News has been told that King Hussein in his palace tonight is monitoring developments in the war and is aware of the situation there, but has not yet determined to tell the people here. That announcement, of course, could be a potentially explosive one for people here, given their strong sentiments in support of Saddam Hussein and largely against military action against Iraq. Also tonight, there is great fear about those Iraqi missiles because, as you pointed out, Jordan is squarely between Iraq and Israel, and Iraq has threatened that in the event of war they would use the missiles or launch some sort of an attack on Israel. That leaves Jordan in the middle, everyone here waiting and listening tonight to see if that attack should get underway.
Doug Tennell and Amman, and again, if we can put that map up, when we were in Jordan and our various visits to the Middle East over the last few months, one of the remarkable things to me at least was when you drove the road from Amman up to Jordan's border with Iraq, you could virtually see just across Jordan's border with Iraq, or where some of Iraq's most extensive Scud missile sites are. There's a reason for that, because the Iraqis wanted to put those Scuds in the best position to strike against Israel, emphasizing, so far as anybody knows, no Scud missiles have yet been fired. But if and when Scud missiles are fired by the Iraqis, it would be possible along that Jordanian border on the Jordanian side to see the flashes of light as they were fired. Now, there are reports of gunfire over Baghdad. Our people in Baghdad don't know whether the gunfire is incoming, outgoing, or both. They're the report of the Tomahawk missiles. That's the cruise. When we say a cruise, that's an unmanned missile that can avoid radar and avoid enemy detection devices. It carries a warhead. It's a so-called smart missile. We believe that those cruise-style missiles have been fired. A squadron of F-15Es took off from central Saudi Arabia, and one of the Air Force officers in charge said, quote, "This is history in the making." Marlin Fitzwater has announced, quote, "The liberation of Kuwait is underway," and he said it was under, and the military gives names to these things, under the name of Desert Storm. That's an upgrade, as it were, from Desert Shield. The President of the United States is going to address the nation and the world in about an hour and 25 minutes from now. That would be at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here in the United States. President Bush will be addressing the nation. Air raid sirens in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and in Riyadh. No confirmation, repeat, no confirmation that actual air attacks are underway. Could have been precautionary, but air raid sirens have gone off in Dhahran and Riyadh. There are many more U.S. military people in and around Dhahran than around the capital city of Riyadh, but in both places, people have been moved to bomb shelters. General Michael Dugan, the recently retired U.S. Air Force general, is still with us in our Washington Bureau. General Dugan, what kind of targets would be considered prime around Baghdad?
Around Baghdad, Dan, the chief targets would be those command and control kinds of nodes, centers, that Saddam Hussein would use to exercise his control of his broad military forces in the country, and in particular his air defense forces.
And in Kuwait, what targets would be considered prime?
In Kuwait and in the broader areas in Iraq, one would look, for example, at the Scud missiles, I think, early on. They are important to U.S. forces. They're important to the coalition partners. They're important to the civilians that live in various cities in the vicinity. And those would be a key target that would have political impact in addition to a military impact. And I think that they would be high, likely, on General Schwarzkopf's list of important targets.